Now we're going to go slightly out of order from what we had announced, but what we mentioned earlier, and do what we did mentioned earlier this afternoon. We'll hear from the state of New Mexico. The state has applied to hold a pre-window state-run primary. I'd like to welcome Chair Adelson and the delegation from New Mexico to the podium to begin their presentation. As a reminder, you have 15 minutes, and we thank you for being here today.
Good morning, Democrats.
Good
My
morning.
name is Sarah Adelson. I am chair of the Democratic Party of New Mexico, and I would like to introduce our presenters today. First, we have Michelle Mayorga, who is the Democratic Party's leading expert in Latino policy and public opinion. In 2025, she became the first woman of color to be named Democratic Pollster of the Year by AAPC. Next, Dominic Caballo, a veteran, Cabello, I am so sorry. I did a Spanish twist. Is a veteran New Mexico political consultant who most recently served as senior advisor to Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham, helping direct her campaigns in 2018 and 2022. Also, we have Isaac Dakota Casados of the Navajo Nation, is a political strategist and tribal advocate with nearly 2 decades of experience in Democratic Party leadership, beginning his career on Capitol Hill while studying at Georgetown University. Next, we have Sean Ward. Oh, okay. The next person, no introduction needed, our wonderful governor who has led New Mexico with her bold policy, and we are so grateful for all that she has done for the state and for New Mexico families.
Welcome, Governor.
Good morning, everyone, and we are all delighted to be here. I flew here just this morning to watch poor Sarah, and all the normal-sized people have to stand on my box. Worth everything. But I really specifically want to thank Minion Moore and James Roosevelt for making adjustments. I know that this is not a process that lends itself to making those adjustments because you've been working really hard with a ton of people who are ready to go to make their presentations. But today is my 4th wedding anniversary, and this job is enough to get you divorced every day.
Congratulations.
So, yeah, every day. So I'm going to get right back to my wedding anniversary. But it's important for me to be here because I think as we look at a 5th state to add sort of the entire picture about what we need to do for the early states, New Mexico has, frankly, everything to offer. We're a minority-majority state. We have demonstrated getting democratic, value-led policies on the ground in ways that no other poor state in this country's history has done, and quite frankly, no other state in America has done, including the only state ever in America to be cradle-to-career education and family support. Universal free childcare, universal pre-K, number 1. If you combine all the categories in the nation, UCLA says New Mexico now's got the most prepared kindergartens in the country, kindergartners, and 2-year, 4-year full tuition paid college. They just announced we have the highest first-time enrollment in college. That's minority students, first-time college students in America. And it also applies to unions, trades, and apprenticeships. So we don't close the door, we keep opening the doors, and we're opening the doors in a way that bridges urban and rural opportunities. You're going to hear more about that, but I'm delighted to be here to make as many of those cases as possible. Thank you for having us today. It means a lot to us. And now the rest of you can get on this box.
Thank you, Governor.
You look huge. Oh, perfect. Do you have the clicker? Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Michelle, can you go to the next slide when you come back? Thank you. All right, next slide. So a couple of things that I want to highlight. First, the voters that we're losing nationally are in New Mexico. This slide reflects that. So New Mexico reflects the challenges that we're facing. Hispanic Latino voters shifted 12 points to Trump last cycle. Support from young people dropped 6 points. Working class voters are moving more solidly right. Native American support dropped 6 points. Trump doubled his already large rural advantage by up to 30 points. These are the voters of New Mexico. Next slide. New Mexico will join 4 other states to tell a story. The full story cannot be told without us. We are a majority-minority state. We share a border with Mexico. We are home to 23 federally recognized tribes, and we are rural. You can't win by campaigning in one place in New Mexico. Next slide. Next slide. So just to talk about running a campaign in New Mexico real quick, we are very cheap compared to other states to campaign in. We have one market that covers 90% of the entire state, and cost per point is around $120 to $200 for a point. To reach Native American voters, though, you can't just rely on traditional media. You have to rely on the media that they have. Radio and tribal print is still a big thing on our tribal nations. We are accessible. There are no filing fees. You don't have to collect petition signatures, so we're incredibly accessible to candidates. Next slide. Because our campaign market is cheap, though, you can't just buy the election. You can't just buy the airwaves. You have to campaign, and you have to campaign the full state, not just one county. In fact, our urban vote share, as you can see in this graph, is actually dropping from 47% in 2016 down to 39% in 2024. And even though we are a rural state that requires a statewide campaign, 76% of the state, the primary voting block, is within a 1-hour drive of of Albuquerque. Additionally, campaigns will need a full field program that will adapt to rural Hispanic villages, our tribal lands, and our small college towns. Next slide. We all remember that our pundits in 2024 were talking about educational attainment and rural-urban as a strong indicator of vote choice. As you can see on this graph, New Mexico is actually closer to states like Ohio and Indiana that are turning redder, and somehow we've managed to keep New Mexico blue. Next slide. In the cycle, we will have to make the case to young people. New Mexico's young people are predominantly working class. Only 28.1% have a bachelor's degree. That's something that we're working on thanks to our wonderful governor. Next slide. New Mexico is the only applicant state that shares a border with Mexico. 78% of Americans say that that is a top issue for them, and there's no better place to test messaging on the border than in New Mexico. Next slide. Isaac.
Thank you, Sean. Well, one of the key areas is our Native American constituency. As you all know, Arizona, specifically our tribal nations, played an extraordinary role in deciding how that state actually moved. You know, we are a small but a really important constituency across multiple states. And it's really going to be one of the electorates that we need to really hone into this primary calendar. The Brookings Institute actually found that half of Native American voters have never had contact with any campaign because there's vast distrust that still exists, and we need to be able to bridge that gap. And really, no early nominating state meaningfully reflects their voice. And so this is a great opportunity for us to open up the doors with our 23 federally recognized tribes, as well as ensuring that, one, we engage on tribal sovereignty and self-determination, healthcare, and public safety in ways that we've never done before in the DNC.
And next we want to talk about working class men. Something to keep in mind in New Mexico, our working class men are very diverse. They are very Hispanic. They are very Native American. We are also one of the poorest states in the nation. So our working class men are really living paycheck to paycheck, and whatever is going on in the economy is felt very, very deeply and quickly in our state. And the Democratic Party has had an issue with working class men, as I'm sure I don't need to tell anyone in this room about. But we have seen drop off with them, and this would be a real opportunity for us to go back into these communities, win them back, and really bring them onto the Democratic Party. And then this is it should say eligible Latino voters. This is looking at it nationally. Again, we are a majority minority state, and so our electorate is actually a plurality Hispanic. But you can see here across the country, Latinos are becoming a larger and larger portion of the electorate and are a large portion of the electorate, especially under 44. So I'm not saying we're coming for you, but a little bit. Next slide. And this is just about our electorate being very, very Latino. We are a plurality combined with Native Americans, African Americans at AAPI. We are a majority of the electorate, but it is predominantly Latino. And this would give us a chance, because we have been seeing, particularly in our sort of historic Hispanic communities, the rural communities, the Mora counties of the world, we have been seeing drop off with them, and this is really an opportunity to sort of go in and bring them back to the Democratic Party. These are counties where, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama won by 70% of the vote, and now we are winning them with 60% of the vote, and we really would relish the opportunity to go back and do organizing in those communities and bring them back on board with Democrats.
So I'm actually just going to kick it over to our governor to talk about some of the policies that we have put forward in New Mexico that we believe Democratic candidates can learn from. Go for it.
I'm going to go without my box.
We can see you.
I don't know who said that, but I like you. Straight up. And then you're going to get a flavor for what a difficult personality I am and how, oh my God, Congresswoman, what are you doing over there? Is this going to cut into my time? She has all my clothes, and also you're supposed to do a sleepover, so you are grounded, and I'm calling people. I don't even know what I'm doing. Policies. I did a lot of the cradle to career, so let's go to the slide. So if you guys are going to cheat, I'm going to do it too, because, Oh, there you are. Nope, you guys are terrible at this. There's no practicing when you just get off a plane.
She already fired me, it's fine.
I'm fired.
They're all fired. Let me tell you what they didn't tell you. In northern New Mexico, where my family has been for 400 years, every Hispanic family, irrespective of where your political leanings are, which is not consistent with what your registered party is, they still have pictures of John F. Kennedy right there next to Jesus, all right? In every single one of those households. These are democratic, valued households for a long time. The issues are about the economy, public safety, and the border. We have not done the right organizing, nor have we talked about those policies in a meaningful way. And New Mexico has a completely different story to tell. Economic mobility. We're #1 in the country for wage growth. And while we still have a poverty index, the nation's largest poverty reduction in its history is in childhood poverty. We went from 50th to 23rd. It's never happened, and we're going to keep trending in that direction. We've added not 14,000 jobs, as this says. That's just our economic development type jobs where we give companies incentives. We've done more than 150,000 jobs for a state that's got 2 million people. We're 5th in GDP growth. You don't do that unless you double your population or unless you're meeting people, working families, where they are. We've doubled the working families tax credit. It's nearly $1 billion in relief. The number you see up there is in just 1 year's effort. We also kept the child tax credit. We're the only state in America that did the work that the ACA wanted you to do, which means when the feds abandoned every American household, New Mexico stood up. We cover you and subsidize your premiums. So we don't lose folks. We're the second highest Medicaid state in America, 150% of poverty. We're creating trust funds for behavioral health, for Medicaid, for rural health care delivery. We're making stunning investments. And I didn't even go through the entire list, here's the biggest opportunity in New Mexico. We keep, as politicians, telling people, although we say we aren't telling them that, but we do, That everything is a binary choice. If you want truth and fairness, it's got to be Democrats, but if you're worried about jobs and if you're working in oil and gas, then you can't vote for a Democrat. That's just not true. New Mexico outpaced Texas in oil and gas production last year, and we have the lowest methane emissions of any state doing high energy production. Guess what else? All of the energy to power the entire eastern United States is in New Mexico. And what is it? It's solar, it's wind. The largest wind farm in America is in New Mexico. We're growing renewable energy jobs 2.5 times faster than the national average. Where is transmission happening? It's happening in New Mexico and in the West. We're number one for geothermal. When you add solar and fusion, all right, where we are putting atoms together, more energy than ever. Oh, I'm in trouble. It is a stunning opportunity to talk about job growth, job security, union protections, trade investments, and the fact that people feel like America has left them behind, free childcare. And the wages aren't $15 an hour, they're $18 an hour at the floor. We pay for incentives to get you to 20, 25, and 30. No place in America is that happening. 64% increase in that sector. The rest of America, 7% decrease in those important investments that families need. And our college enrollment is unbelievable. We're showing that we can do social family-based policies, we can change the economic design, we can talk about public safety and the border, and we can talk about energy in a way that renews our commitment to democratic values and engages minority voters. New Mexico is the entire story, and we'd like to present that story in an early primary fashion so that we're getting candidates to organize these voters in a way that's meaningful for the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor, and thank you to all of you for your presentation. We're now going to open it up for members for discussion. Please turn your name tents vertically in order to be recognized. And we're going to start with Henry.
Well, for a person who spent his entire organizing career thinking about the Latino community and mestizaje and the indigenous community, I just want to say there have been a lot of people who've stood in this room talking about us, but you're the first group that actually brought our voices into the room, and I want to thank you for that.
Thank you.
I do have an interesting question, I think, given the work that you've done and the progress that you've made in bringing about policies that do match democratic principles in this continuum of states that all have to hang together in the early primary season. Would you consider going last?
Yes.
It just seems to me like maybe, but that's a good answer. You know, taking the things that you've been able to accomplish and allowing our candidates to relate to communities through them and use them as a national model makes some sense.
I completely agree, and we defer to this committee. You all are the deciders, and we'd be happy to participate in any way.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Andre Triber.
Thank you, Andre Triber, Texas. And being from Texas is what this question is going to come from. So y'all mentioned on a slide that you were the only border state to apply, but we got through that slide in all of about 20 seconds. So I wanted to open it up to hear more about what it means to be the only state on the border. I'm sure y'all have a lot of shared frustrations. We do, hearing from people over 1,000 miles away about what it's like to be a border state. So I would just love to hear y'all talk more about what it means to be a border state, how border policy affects campaigns in your state, you know, what you would hope would come of it, having presidential campaigns have to come and campaign in border communities.
They're chickens. I actually bristle not at Texas, well, not for this reason. You need to stop emitting methane right at my border. I need to talk to your governor. Thank you, that guy. Not every state is a border state. This notion that we've allowed this messaging to be that every state is affected by border policies in the same way is false. And when we let a false narrative occur, it's a problem for the southwestern border states. Everyone in my state, including me, is interested in border security. Everyone in my state, and I believe in every border state, wants competent, trained, sufficient staff at the border and across the border to assist people in migrating to the United States. Everyone in our states is completely dedicated, bipartisan, although they won't do it in Congress because they're chickens, to do real immigration reform. There isn't anybody in my state, not a single Democrat really, that is talking about things like open borders, this national rhetoric that makes no sense. There isn't anyone in my state, really, that believes that those jobs are being taken by people who come over. We have to re-own the narrative at the border. There is a public safety issue, and in New Mexico in particular, that's different from Texas, is the intersection between I-40 and I-25. In New Mexico, while we had a surge in many administrations, and that is a difficult aspect to manage, that's not the big issue with the public safety concern, which is fentanyl, which comes from everywhere. Across the border, China, Russia, you name it, it's coming over. It's that they can move it through larger, less complicated areas to cross, which is Arizona, and then it traffics in. And so people are tired, and they want a cohesive approach to public safety, border security, and fair support. Also, last thing, nobody in New Mexico, and I said it during the campaign, they don't want mass deportation. Nobody understood voters. They didn't think it would really happen. Well, it is happening. And this indiscriminate, unjust, unconstitutional deportation efforts, while we have not been a target state, both parties are unhappy in this situation, and it's enough to get solid Republican voters to vote in a general election for a Democrat.
I just want to add one thing really quick. Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham also signed a bill this year keeping ICE out of our polling locations, which is super, super important in our borderlands. And New Mexico was the first state in the nation to do that. So thank you, Governor.
David?
Thank you, David McDonald, Washington. During your presentation, you commented on the Native American community having a distinct media access or network, and I wonder if you could elaborate on that, both in terms of how is it distinct, and second, the extent to which access to that media network in New Mexico directly influences the access to information in the adjacent swing states where you had identified Native American votes were critical, including non-adjacent states such as Wisconsin, and whether that is essentially a media network that gets overlooked if you're not in a state that has a high Native American population like New Mexico. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Thank you for that question. Well, because we have the Navajo Nation, you have the Navajo Times, and you also have direct language radio stations that are within the primary region. So it's a direct way to be able to communicate with those voters, whereas on the Navajo Nation, we have individuals that are like 23% that only speak Navajo within their local community. So being able to speak politics to them in ways that otherwise the English language barrier would be more challenging, I think is incredibly important. The other thing that we've seen with our Pueblo community, specifically our 19 Pueblos, they all coordinate messaging at their local community level. So you would actually have individuals or candidates be able to use their local publications or their newsletters to be able to broadcast that message out to those key voters. The other part is most of our tribal nations, the language scenario is not in written text. So it has to be spoken verbally within community dialogue so that we can take democratic values, position it in a way where it's either in Tewa, Tiwa, Karasin, Navajo, the Apache languages, so that those individuals that are the JFK voters, the individuals that have been tied to that idea, understand why it's important that they turn out to vote. It's not that tribal members are not committed to the process. We just don't engage them. So that's where the media market really comes into play. The other part that the party has done so well is we created a seat at the table for all of our tribal leaders. So when I was chair of the Native American Caucus, one of the things we did is we created a rule. So we created 14 key seats for tribal entities. That is included with Governor Janelle Roybal from Pewaukee Pueblo. We have Vice President Dwayne Duffy from Mescalero. We have Rochelle Montoya, the Vice President of the Navajo Nation. We have Joey Sanchez, the current chairman of the All Pueblo Council of Governors. They sit on our SEC, and because their voices are now elevated, we're not talking about a seat. They actually sit in it, and they help to determine where we move in policy and key issues that are most profound to the state's impact.
And how much does that bleed out into the swing states? It sounded a lot like the New Mexico organization, which was very impressive, but with those language specificities, I just wondered how much it bleeds out into the other states.
So the Navajo Times, as well as their local radio stations, have play within Colorado, Utah, and Arizona. So they're not just indicative to New Mexico. The other part is you have a coalition of Apache tribes, so that exact same messaging resonates to our Arizona tribes as well. So the one thing that I think a lot of people think that tribal nations are very isolated, but we talk amongst each other. And there's a reciprocity of information that goes back and forth between the tribal nations, and that's where the key difference is. When you start a foundational communication messaging in one area, it tends to spread like wildfire.
I might do one more. I know that we're almost out of time. We're also the most robust state for consultations with tribes. So the messaging about policy, practice, voting, polling sites, solving challenges really occurs in New Mexico and then goes out to other governors. So they push Utah in particular and Arizona. It's a really good test. And we ought to be replicating that in the Democratic Party strongholds around the country for sovereign nations.
Governor, staff?
Stephanie Campaña in New Jersey. Thank you for your presentation. First and foremost, New Mexico fits always goes so hard. But I have the same question. Can you please share the average cost of rent for a one-bedroom in Albuquerque and Carlsbad?
1,200. I don't know Carlsbad, but Roswell, which is nearby, is 872. Albuquerque is 1,079.
Thank you.
And there's a difference between short-term rentals in the energy industry, which is an issue for voters, and long-term rentals. And New Mexico needs to do better. We're going to invest $750 million after leveraging in affordable housing. We're providing housing for nurses, health practitioners, and educators. We're also the only state that did Native educator parity because the feds don't pay them enough, and we did a 38% increase. So we're doing all the things that we can to bridge these divides between the cost of living in rural areas, cost of living with energy dominant, and cost of living in urban areas.
Thank you. Jane?
Thank you, Chair. First, I just want to say, as the Democratic Party, we've often struggled to discuss energy and climate issues in a way that both protects property rights, sovereign rights, water, and also expands energy, because we obviously need to build energy. And New Mexico's done it. I really think you're the only state that has done both developing energy and making sure that we're putting money in the pockets of people whose land is impacted by the energy creation. So congratulations. And I do think it would elevate that discussion in a presidential primary. So thank you for lifting that up. For the chair and ED, this is probably a question more directed at you. Talk to us a little bit on how your partisan voter registration happens, or how voter registration happens in your state, and how, if you were in the early states, how that would help you build out your party infrastructure.
Well, I can speak a little bit to the voter registration. So we have automatic voter registration in New Mexico, and so more and more people are registering as nonpartisan with no party, because they're just getting registered when they get a driver's license, et cetera. And so I will let you talk about the party piece, but there is we are losing our share of the electorate. Democrats used to be a huge piece of the electorate, and as we're sort of getting these new people in, we really have work to do to organize to bring people into the Democratic Party.
I think for the second part of the answer, probably everyone would have a little bit of a different answer on what the Democratic Party needs to do with any infrastructure that this brings. But what I would say is, you know, looking back to 2014, one of the issues that we faced the same reality that Democrats across the country did, you know, in terms of Republicans having an advantage that year. But in New Mexico, not to be mean to anyone, but we had a lot of uninteresting candidates that year, and we suffered losses down the ballot. And I think that one of the things that I'm looking at now is not where we are right now, but where we need to be in 10 years. And we need to be building that bench right now so that we can win tomorrow. And so in terms of what I'm thinking, I believe that we need to really increase our municipal and down-ballot infrastructure. We haven't had that. Our municipal races are nonpartisan. And the Secretary of State doesn't hold all of that information on the upcoming elections. So just this last year, we went through every single county, every single municipality, and looked to see what elections had happened, how frequent those elections happen, and we're going to use that information to start investing in recruiting candidates. We have to be building up our bench today if we want to win tomorrow.
And you didn't ask this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Down ballot is really where we build our bench in New Mexico, and we have more women and women of color elected in New Mexico than anywhere else in the country. We have the most female legislature.
Thank you.
We can't lose anyone. We should be winning by stunning margins, given the shape of this country and the issues that we're all battling every single day for the people that we love in our communities. Straight up. Should be no contest. But it is. If women, Democratic women, just show up and vote, we're good. We don't need any of the men. I want the men. I am greedy. Losing anyone, and that's been, I think, part of the Democratic's National Party branding problem. We focus on a group. We're very concerned, me too. I had a really tough re-election. I lost Hispanic men. COVID and border issues did not help me in a policy debate about being returned to a job I love. It was tough. Now, given the policies and the issues and seeing what's happening at the national level, that's shifting. We can't just have tailwinds and call it good. What New Mexico wants to bring to the table is we can create our own tailwinds over and over and over again. If we're not so monolithic, if we figure out the energy and job issues, if you do real conservation work and you do real environmental work, the differences and the disparities aren't so stunning, and it causes everyone to reassociate with the democratic values that they believed in to start with.
Thank you, Governor. Donna?
I was sitting here with my amens hat on. I love a presentation where I don't have a lot of criticism. But, Madam, I want to say to our Madam Leader, first of all, congratulations on your wedding anniversary. But you signed one of the most, I think, meaningful and purposeful Voting Rights Act a couple of years ago that strengthened voter protection and, of course, expanded and enshrined Native American voting rights. Will you be able to share this important piece of legislation, which also includes automatic voter registration, restore the rights of persons formerly incarcerated? Will you be able to share that information with other states so that more Democratic governors can institute that, given what's happened with the Voting Rights Act? That's number one. And number two, as you well know, the Trump administration is suing states across the country for failure to turn over their complete voter list, voter registration list. Has the Trump administration sued New Mexico over your voter data? And have you complied by turning over additional information? And secondly, I think your Secretary of State has also been involved in some litigation or some accusation that your voter registration lists are not clean enough. Your voter rolls are not clean enough. So my question is how you're fighting back.
Ms. Brazil, it's so nice to see you again. This is 2 weekends in a row.
I know, you
People
keep
are
it
going
up.
to say we're dating.
Well,
First,
have
I
good
will-
taste too.
Yeah. I will share anything with anyone, anytime. Look, we think we have a lot of blueprints for democracy in New Mexico. Because if people can't go to work, if women can't make choices, if they can't make decisions that are fair about their families, they're not participating in our democracy. That hurts everyone, hurts Democrats. We'll do all of it. These voter protection laws were important to us because we're a majority state and we're so incredibly rural. It's easy to lose those opportunities for people who are just too far away or disenfranchised. It's also why we're investing in such a broad educational opportunity for everyone in New Mexico. So the answer to that is yes. I don't think that they have sued us. They've threatened. I mean, the president has said that, like we're, like everyone, I think we were the most corrupt state. Otherwise, Republicans could win. It's clear to me he can't do math. We would never turn over those roles. And I would guess that if I am unaware of a recent lawsuit, I don't think there's been one, it's because he's too busy responding to all of our lawsuits going in the other direction. It's not going to happen.
Thank you. Barry? Barry Goodman?
I don't know if it's just been asked or answered. Barry Goodman from Michigan, but I just wanted to know that if you made the early window, is there an impediment to moving your primary date to whatever date might be sought by the DNC?
I'm going to let the people who actually do all the work, I just do all the talking, talk about that. But look, I would assume that any state in our position making the pitch is going to have to make some foundational structural changes, including we probably have to have a legislative change, if not probably, absolutely. But we are well along the way to make sure that that happens. And I have total confidence, even though I won't be the governor. I also have a high degree of confidence we will have a Democratic governor, and that Democratic governor also is interested and well aware of our efforts today. So we think that we can put it all together pretty efficaciously, but if I'm missing something, I'll let one of these guys go.
No, I was just going to add, and also either way, whoever the Democratic governor is, they both have been chair of the party, so they're, we don't see issues there.
Thank you.
And just a few other points on that. So we would have to change the statute, but our letter of support includes both candidates for governor on the Democratic side, both candidates for Secretary of State on the Democratic side, House Speaker Javier Martinez, Senate Pro Tem Mimi Stewart. So we have broad support from the legislative body as well as those who are running for governor and Secretary of State.
Thank you. Yvette?
Yvette Lewis, Maryland. Sort of piggybacking on what Henry said about going last, one of the things that happens with these primaries is that they're springboards. How do you see your state, if you were to be in this window, where do you see this springboarding our presidential candidate? I have an idea, but I'm curious to hear what you think about how this could be used as a springboard across the country. Next steps.
Okay. Well, I've worked for 2 presidential primaries. I worked for Senator Sanders in 2016 and in 2020, and I've worked across the states. I think that, New Mexico is a state that is like no other. We have a population, the people of New Mexico are like no other. So in terms of what I see a candidate coming out of that who can actually effectively campaign to the people that are across this country that look like New Mexico. So I see it as a springboard and not just a talking point for We Won New Mexico, but that we can make the case to Hispanic voters, that we can make the case for rural voters. Like I said, you can't just campaign in one spot in New Mexico. You have to campaign the whole state. Go for it.
And lastly, but as important, and I might be a little point of personal privilege, but Henry and I have spoken about this a lot. We can't wait until October to be talking to Hispanic or Latino voters. And New Mexico is very unique because you have to be able to translate your messages to Hispanic voters, that's me, and the Latino voters, which is a whole different group of minority voters in the state. The earlier we do this, the more likely it is we don't have to then after the fact, try to figure out what happened to Hispanic voters around the country. And I don't know why we keep doing that. But as long as I've been in politics, I'm a late bloomer. I didn't really start it until my mid-50s, but it's been the case every time. Do it earlier. Prepare earlier. Hold those voters. Keep those voters. That's going to make a huge difference. That's the stability that we need. It's not fair to the candidates that we're not doing it, quite frankly.
Maria?
Thank you. Governor Lujan, so great to see you here. Maria Cardona with DC. And to piggyback upon what you were just saying and on the comment about the bill that you signed, keeping ICE out of polling places, I think that is so critical. But as you know, there's been so much misinformation and disinformation into our Latino communities and immigrant communities and communities of color that the fear is already there. There's already been polling and focus groups done among Latino voters across the country. Many of them are already deciding not to go vote because it's not worth them putting themselves in danger or their families in danger. So I would love to hear a little bit about what you are doing to try to educate our community, let them know about this bill, let them know that there will be mechanisms to make sure that they are safe when they go vote, that their families will be safe, and that their vote will actually be counted.
Thank you so much for that question. I think we are doing a lot of things. One, making sure that ICE is not allowed anywhere near our polling locations so that they can't be intimidating, et cetera. I will also say that I know that our county clerk in Las Cruces, which is our county on the border, has a podcast where she every week goes on and talks about misinformation, and she's also in every high school in the county, talking to young voters, telling them that it's okay, making sure that she's working with police as well. Our border communities are very, very, very set up to deal with this and to deal with it very well. And I will add that Doña Ana County, Las Cruces, is a blue county as well. It is not in our Albuquerque media market. It is in the El Paso. Shout out to the El Paso contingent here today. But they do work very, very hard to make sure those messages are getting out and people feel safe and protected in our border communities.
Thank you.
And the legislature puts in millions of dollars, and I'll take credit for that. I made them put millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars, into outreach and protection work, which includes lawyers. The issue really for a state like New Mexico is mixed status families, where the eligible voter won't go for fear of what occurs to the rest of the family. So making sure that everyone knows that we have the right protections in the right way, that it's all free, that it's available, that we're doing the outreach. And it has made a difference because we saw a stunning drop early in the Trump administration at hospital care, primary care, clinical care, schools, faith-based communities, church, all of it. That's beginning to come back. I would say it's still like it is in America. There's good reason to have that on shaky ground because none of us can do adequate protections if they're not going to be held accountable for indiscriminate deportations and actions. But I think that we have the right recipe for creating that confidence for those eligible family household voters, and I feel really good about that. It's not perfect. I don't think it can be perfect given that we have someone who doesn't follow the law.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you. Alicia?
Thank you, Co-Chair. Thank you, New Mexico, for a thorough presentation, and thank you for a diverse delegation. But one of my biggest frustrations with the 2024 election is that at the end, we blamed the folks that we didn't talk to in the beginning. So there was all this conversation about how Latino men didn't show up and conversation about how Black men didn't show up. And in listening to the entire presentation, I felt like the discussion about African Americans was sort of a drive-by. And so my question is, what type of outreach are you doing to African Americans?
Thank you very much for that question. I do want to say that New Mexico, we have had several Black elected leaders, including the vice chair of our party. We also have a Black state senator who is also running for lieutenant governor. And so we really do work hard to represent that community. I think there could obviously be more work done there. But we are working hard to organize in those communities. Those communities in our areas are predominantly urban, so they do get much more outreach than maybe some of our rural areas. And we've had quite a few sort of elected officials and party people come out of that organizing. And so it's actually something that we're pretty proud of, but it is a smaller population in our state.
I disagree with Michelle. One of the most stunning communities that is diverse, that includes African American, Hispanic, Latino, and Asian representatives, Asian Americans, is in the oil patch. And so it's not just urban. Which then again requires that rural investment. But probably the most effective opportunity here is our African American faith-based community is powerful in New Mexico, and my sense is they are powerful everywhere, and they are standing up for justice. It is a unique opportunity to do better there, because I agree with you. I take that personally when they tell me, you're responsible because you're a Hispanic governor, which, by the way, I'm the shortest governor in America and the only Hispanic governor in America. And I take both those things personally. And we have to talk to everyone. And this blame game doesn't do anything except disenfranchise people from the party. So thank you for that. And there's no question, there isn't a group that we couldn't organize better. I mean, I have complete faith in our Democratic Party, but Citizens United's made it hard for parties everywhere. They've made it hard for the DNC. That means that we have to do the organizing and field work better and differently than we have. We took it for granted when we didn't have those obstacles. You keep raising that issue because I think you're right. You're welcome.
Thank you. Shad?
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. I think, when we're talking about rural voters, just as the chair of Colorado, Shad Mirab, the diversity of public lands and the conversation that comes from that is something that we think about a lot out west. And I'm just curious if you could speak to the different types of arguments that candidates could have about public lands and gun ownership and hunters' rights and that unique way that we talk about climate change. Is that something that you found in your own campaigns and as part of your messaging plan for Democrats, or is that something that has kind of fallen by the wayside with affordability taking so much prominence lately?
I don't know that it's by the wayside. I mean, we've done a lot of gun violence reform in the state, and as you know from being in the West, it's a tough issue in the West, but we have done some pretty stunning legislative work, but for a little moment, I think we could have actually had a ban on assault weapons in the state of New Mexico, which for those of us from the West is a really tough thing to do because public safety, ranching, agriculture, and the recreational aspects for hunting and wildlife opportunities, frankly, requires that you, and if you're having a firearm and if you're hunting bear or mountain lion, you need a rifle, and it needs to be able to shoot more than one bullet. So it's a needle that you have to thread. I think where New Mexicans all uniquely come together is we might debate about the public safety natures here, but I would say New Mexicans have embraced the fact that the number one issue, public health issue, is kids and guns in America. We lose more children to gun violence than we do anything else. I think New Mexicans have come to understand that, given that we have some public safety challenges in the state. And that helps, but at the same time, they've seen us really lean into public land and conservation protections. I mean, we have a land of enchantment fund that's got $350 million in it. We're buying up ranches so that there's public access to those. We're doing shared stewardship with sovereign nations so that everyone is engaged and involved. We continue to set up public lands opportunities. I think we're one of maybe only a couple of states that's got an outdoor equity fund, which takes kids, particularly low-income kids from minority households, and gets them in the great outdoors and teaches them hunting, fishing, firearm safety, all of it. That sort of sets of investments, I think, have made New Mexicans feel better about it's not a monolithic, you have to choose one and abandon the other. And it's another, I think, issue for Democrats with women. More women are buying firearms, but I will give you a little women stat that I just read, so I haven't fact-checked it. That's what Dominic, he'll bark at me later, and my press, who's probably watching this live stream, is that women in greater numbers for first-time firearm owners get the right training for those firearms, which is, again, a really good shift in American policy about firearm ownership and public safety. So it's another opportunity for Democrats to get it right, particularly in the West.
Thanks, Governor.
And Chad, on that question, I don't pretend to have all of the answers on those issues, but our candidates need to have answers to those issues. And I think that the advantage that New Mexico brings is that you can't just win in an urban area. You have to have those discussions in the rural parts of the state. You have to have those conversations with the folks who live off of the public land. And so New Mexico brings that to the table, and those are issues that carry over into so many states, not just in the West, but across the country.
Well, thank you. We've touched on a lot of important issues and a great presentation. And appreciate all of you, and especially you, Governor. Thank you.
Thank you. He is hilarious.
I just wanted to let you know that Lorraine is here.
Yeah.